West Africa is on fire with political drama. Once the mighty ECOWAS stood tall, threatening sanctions and punishments against military leaders. But today, in a twist nobody saw coming, its own chief is bowing his head to Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, the man who walked away from the bloc. With words that shook the continent, ECOWAS's top voice is now pleading, "Please, join us again." What happened behind closed doors? Why is ECOWAS suddenly desperate? And will Traoré accept the olive branch or slam the door shut forever? Tonight, we uncover the full story of betrayal, regret, and a shocking apology that could change Africa's future. West Africa has witnessed many political storms over the decades, but nothing shook the region more than the stunning decision of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to abandon the economic community of West African states, the very bloc created to protect and unify its members. This wasn't just an exit. It was a rebellion against an old order that many in the Sahel felt had failed them. For decades, ECOWAS positioned itself as the guardian of regional unity, economic cooperation, and political stability. But to leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, ECOWAS became something very different, a tool of pressure, punishment, and betrayal. Instead of standing shoulder to shoulder with nations fighting a deadly wave of terrorism, ECOWAS chose to impose sanctions, cutting off economies already suffocating under war. The breaking point came when Burkina Faso, along with Mali and Niger, declared enough was enough. They walked away, and with that formed the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a military and economic pact meant to secure their sovereignty. Suddenly, ECOWAS, once the unchallenged power broker, was bleeding influence and credibility. The departure was more than symbolic. It created a new political reality. West Africa was now split between two visions of the future. One led by the AES, unapologetically sovereign, militarily assertive, and increasingly resistant to Western influence. The other, ECOWAS, struggling to project authority while maintaining its traditional ties with international powers. For Captain Traoré, this was not just politics. It was personal. He openly accused ECOWAS of betrayal, saying the bloc ignored the sacrifices of soldiers dying daily in the Sahel, while at the same time punishing their governments with harsh sanctions. To him, ECOWAS no longer represented solidarity. It represented abandonment. And yet, the story did not end with the split. In a shocking twist, whispers began to spread. The very leaders who once sanctioned Traoré's government were now sending olive branches. Behind closed doors, the powerful voices of ECOWAS began to shift. Their tone changed from arrogance to desperation. Publicly, they still spoke in careful diplomatic language. But privately, one message echoed louder than ever. Please, come back. The world gasped when news broke that ECOWAS chairman Julius Maada Bio, the president of Sierra Leone, had quietly flown into Ouagadougou for a face-to-face meeting with Ibrahim Traoré. It wasn't just another diplomatic trip. It was a symbolic admission of weakness. For months, ECOWAS had threatened, condemned, and punished. Now, its highest representative was standing on Traoré's doorstep, hat in hand. According to regional sources, the visit was planned in secrecy. No loud announcements, no grand press conferences. Just a discreet arrival, hushed motorcades, and a closed-door dialogue. Yet the images that later surfaced told the story better than any statement. Traoré, young, firm, dressed in military fatigues, standing tall, and opposite him, the ECOWAS leader extending what seemed less like authority and more like an appeal. Inside the room, the conversation reportedly carried a tone that shocked many diplomats. The man representing ECOWAS spoke not as a superior power but as a repentant partner. While official statements carefully avoided the word apology, those who attended the meeting hinted at a very different mood: regret over past actions, acknowledgement of ECOWAS missteps, and an almost pleading message that the doors of ECOWAS remain open if Burkina Faso and the AES would only consider returning. Was this an official apology? Perhaps not in words, But in tone and body language, it was unmistakable. It was ECOWAS saying, "We need you." This was more than diplomacy. It was drama. For months, Traore had accused ECOWAS of being a puppet of foreign powers, incapable of defending Africa's sovereignty. Now, in front of him, stood one of its most powerful leaders, essentially admitting the bloc could not afford to lose Burkina Faso. The phrase, "Please join ECOWAS again," spread across regional media, not because it was written in an official press release, but because it captured the raw truth of the moment. For the first time in history, ECOWAS was on the back foot, reaching out desperately to a leader it once tried to corner. And as Traore listened, arms crossed, eyes sharp, the power dynamic was clear. The tables had turned. The tension between ECOWAS and Burkina Faso, and by extension the AES, did not erupt overnight. It was years in the making, rooted in three explosive issues: security, sanctions, and trust. First, the security crisis. The Sahel is burning. Terrorist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS carve through villages, slaughter civilians, and target soldiers in relentless waves. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger sit at the very heart of this battlefield. Their armies, underfunded and overstretched, are fighting not only for national survival but for the entire region's stability. Yet when they turned to ECOWAS, what did they receive? According to Traore, nothing but lectures and condemnations. Instead of guns, they got sanctions. Instead of solidarity, they got isolation. Second, the sanctions. This is the wound that cut the deepest. When military governments took power in these nations, ECOWAS responded with heavy economic punishments. Borders closed. Banking systems froze. Trade routes collapsed. And who suffered most? Not the generals in power, but the ordinary citizens struggling to put food on their tables. Markets in Ouagadougou and Niamey felt the sting. Families in rural Mali went hungry. Traore repeatedly called this a betrayal of the African spirit, punishing the people while claiming to defend democracy. Third, trust, or rather, the lack of it. By the time the AES was born, leaders like Traore no longer saw ECOWAS as an African brotherhood. To them, it looked like an extension of Western powers, quick to enforce sanctions but slow to defend sovereignty. Every action reinforced the perception that ECOWAS did not truly speak for Africans in the Sahel. The trust was broken. And once broken, it is not easily repaired. This is why Traore's anger carried so much weight. His speeches didn't just criticize ECOWAS, they ignited a feeling shared by millions of Africans, that the Sahel had been abandoned, exploited, and silenced. So when ECOWAS leaders came knocking with apologies, the question was not just about policies or economics. It was about whether trust could ever be restored. Here lies the controversy. Did ECOWAS truly apologize? Or was this just another strategic maneuver dressed up in softer words? Officially, ECOWAS statements are careful. They say the bloc regrets the departure of the AES states, that the door remains open, and that they are ready for dialogue. But behind the scenes, diplomats describe something much closer to an apology in practice. The way leaders are now speaking, with humility instead of threats, with regret instead of demands, marks a dramatic reversal from the past year. Observers describe the visit to Ouagadougou as a political theater of desperation. The very body that once threatened military intervention in Niger is now bowing its head before Traore. Every handshake, every sentence, every gesture carries a silent subtext. We were wrong. Please forgive us. Please return. But here's the question. Is this enough? To the AES, actions speak louder than words. They want proof. Concrete changes, not just polished statements. They want assurance that sanctions will not return, that sovereignty will be respected, that the sacrifices of Sahelian soldiers will no longer be ignored. And this is why the world is divided. Some say ECOWAS is finally recognizing its mistakes and trying to reconcile. Others argue it is merely trying to save face after realizing how badly it miscalculated. Because make no mistake, the departure of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger was a strategic disaster for ECOWAS. Losing three nations in the heart of the Sahel wasn't just about numbers. It was about legitimacy. So when the phrase, "Please join ECOWAS again," went viral, it wasn't important whether those exact words were said. What mattered was the truth it revealed. ECOWAS has shifted from punisher to petitioner, and that alone is a story of historic irony. The stakes could not be higher. If ECOWAS fails to win back the AES, West Africa may face decades of division. Terrorists will exploit disunity. Trade will fracture. Foreign powers will swoop in to manipulate the cracks. And ordinary Africans, farmers, traders, families, will pay the price. For ECOWAS, the loss of these three states is more than symbolic. It weakens the bloc's bargaining power with the world. It strips away vital geography. It exposes a rift that enemies of Africa, extremist groups, opportunistic foreign powers, are eager to exploit. Simply put, the split makes the region weaker. For the AES, the challenge is different. They gained sovereignty and dignity, but they also lost access to certain trade networks, aid, and regional privileges. To survive long-term, they will need stronger partnerships with each other, with Russia, with China, and perhaps one day, again, with ECOWAS. But the path back is narrow. For Traore to even consider rejoining, ECOWAS must prove it has changed. That means real reform, no blanket sanctions, no hypocrisy, no external strings pulling its policies. It means a commitment to fight terrorism shoulder to shoulder. It means respect, not punishment, for African sovereignty. As things stand, the future is uncertain. ECOWAS has extended an olive branch. Traore holds it in his hand, but has not yet decided whether to accept it or snap it in half. One thing, however, is undeniable. The power dynamics have shifted. For the first time, it is not ECOWAS dictating terms to Traore. It is Traore who holds the cards. And so the question that now grips all of West Africa is this. Will the AES walk back into the fold of ECOWAS? Or has this apology come too late? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear. The fate of the region hangs in the balance. In the end, one truth is undeniable. The power balance has shifted. Yesterday, ECOWAS was the punisher and Traore the defiant rebel. Today, ECOWAS is the one apologizing, begging for unity, and Traore holds all the cards. Will the Alliance of Sahel States rejoin ECOWAS, or has this apology come far too late? The answer will decide not only the fate of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, but the destiny of West Africa itself. One thing is certain. Africa is rewriting its history, and the world is watching.